Hello, hi everybody, and welcome back to Rush Online, a showcase of some of Britain's best young Black talent. We're a year on. This week last year, we did the very first one at Holloway Road, and yeah, we're back to do one online. We've got a fantastic lineup of 10 brilliant performers, including myself, and it will be followed by a little discussion around Black history and what it is to be Black in Britain today. Before I introduce my lovely performers, I'm just going to have a bit of a chat about where Black History Month came from. So, in 1926 in America, it was originally called Negro History Week by historian Carter G. Woodson. In 1970 in America, the Black United States, which was a group at Kent State University, adopted it and called it Black History Month. And then in 1987 in the UK, Ghanaian analyst Akayaba Adesebo took it on for himself and brought it on over here for us Britons. So he said, "I was stirred up in the mid-80s by the identity crisis Black children faced, as some brazenly would not identify with Africa and shrank when called an African." These are some topics that we'll be touching on within our performances and in a discussion after, so make sure you stay tuned. Before each performance, I will be saying a little fact about Black history, about racism in Britain, and about how the UK is not innocent. And the first one will be, Black people are more than 3 times more likely to be detained under the Mental Health Act. Now, this fact is poignant because the charity we want to support today with today's show is Black Minds Matter, which is a fantastic charity here in the UK run by Black therapists, which gives free 12-week therapy to Black people in need of mental health help. In the description of the link, you can go in there and you can donate to keep that going. Also in the description, I have listed a bunch of resources online, a bunch of books and a bunch of Instagrams that will help you continue your journey into learning more about Black history. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first guest, Heartfargo.
Hello. This piece is a short extract from a play I'm writing called 3 Visions of Black Utopia. I never knew there were so many ways to be wrong at being Black. And I mean, so many ways. How many ways are there? Great question. There's one right there. Black people don't do ventriloquism. You might have a lot of melanin in your skin, but as soon as you stick your hand up a puppet's butt, you, my friend, are not Black. I only know this because, of course, I have done it. Tiki torches and white hoods excluded, I have done pretty much everything under the sun you can imagine that disqualifies someone from being Black. In lieu of counting fluffy white sheep, I have spent many a sleepless night tallying up my Blackness. For starters, I am half-caste, a moniker I learned as it floated off the lips of a pigtailed girl in prep school. I can't really blame her. She'd only just heard the term for the first time 5 minutes prior, when my teacher had described me as such to the whole class. She wanted to practice her new vocab, so let me know that being half white meant that I was not fully Black. Already, that is minus 50 Black points on the board. My stint as a ventrilo guy, a nickname I tried to popularize at school, cost me at least another 25 points. It would have been more, but my love affair with the art was cut short by a head over heels infatuation with improv at university. Every Thursday night, rather than reading into Zoke and Audra and Belle, I was running around a linoleum black box theatre screaming, "Yes and," at the top of my lungs. Minus 10 points. Black people don't say, "Yes and." My mother, for example, a shining beacon of melanated old school principles, has never said that phrase in her life. She says the opposite, actually. She says, wait, stop. One time, I ran in from school. "Mummy, I'm going to stay at Hamish's this weekend for a sleepover. He invited me and I'm going to go pack a bag." Wait, stop. Come here. Does Hamish own a house? What? Do I need to speak slower? Does Hamish suddenly own land and property where Hamish can invite you round to his house? My face scrunched. A monkey's knot began to tie itself in my throat. They said that he was allowed to invite people over whenever he wanted, so I think it's fine. Her eyes began to migrate to the back of their sockets. They said what to their child? My face marooning with each passing second, I stuttered out, maybe they have a point. You would know if you weren't so mean. You're such a bitch sometimes. To this day, I can still feel the slap that flew across the kitchen with the weight of my ancestors behind it. Is it mean to buy your clothes? Slap. Is it mean to buy your food? Slap. Does a bitch pay for the roof over your head? Slap, slap. I thank God she had a hysterectomy a few weeks before and couldn't make it upstairs to get her rings. Black children don't talk back to their parents, or at least they don't do it twice. Either way, minus 10 black points for me talking back to my mum. I miss her every single day. Yeah, they don't really encourage black people to do self-checks, so when they catch it, it's almost always too late. The ravenous squatter has already colonized too many organs to be removed. It runs amok, and the best person I've ever met slips away. God, there's another one. Black people don't say amok. That is milky white, luminescent caucasity. Minus 5 points. Right before her final round of chemo, I was having a long conversation with my mum on the phone about life, about Jean down the hall, hanging her washing out the window, about nothing and everything. I was taking out the recycling, and out of nowhere, the words fell out of my mouth. I just don't think I've ever really been black enough for you. What? She replied. Barely a whisper. Well, not just you, for anyone. Everyone, my mates, myself. A pause. Pregnant enough for it to have been triplets. And then she said, Jonathan, listen to me. They will make you hate yourself for being too black, and you will hate yourself for not being black enough. You are black, and that is enough. You are enough. You are so enough. It is a miracle how enough you are. You and your sister are the best things that have ever happened to me. Don't waste time hating yourself. I did enough of that when I was your age for the both of us. I think peace, I think utopia was in the 5 minutes after that phone call. See, she gave me the chance to start again, to begin the next section of my life differently to how I'd lived my first. With my mum ringing in my ears, feeling like something had clicked, like my clothes finally fit, I vowed to no longer tally the ways in which I lacked. I have not always kept this promise, but I try. She gave me permission to step into my life as she was preparing to step out of hers. I think our parents pour everything they have into us as children, in the hopes that we are smart enough to let the good bits stick and let the bad bits get caught like grains in a sieve. I never knew there were so many ways to be black, and I'm still learning myself, but in the meantime, I know that I am enough, and I know that I am blessed for all that my mother poured into me, my grandmother into her, and so on back through the ancestral chain of history. Simply and utterly blessed. Thank you.
Yay! Oh, I give me hairs on my arms stood up. I give me goose pimples. Oh, that was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, I feel like there are so many voices externally in the world and internally in our own heads that will tell us all the different ways that we are not enough, that we're not tall enough, hot enough, black enough, white enough, smart enough. And the other day, like I was on Instagram and I was seeing all these like black model accounts with this shiny glow and dewy skin. I was like, I am nothing like that. And realizing that we're all figuring this out in our own ways, and that there are as many ways to be Black as there are Black people in the world.
Amazing. And you're joining us all the way from the USA?
I am indeed.
Yeah.
I'm still here. Fingers crossed I'll be home for Christmas. Who knows? But yeah, I'm still here. And it's been a really tough summer to be in the States and to see everything kind of on our doorstep. But I've really found refuge in things like this, people like you, friends, artwork, everything that is just like Black excellence, really.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Hart.
Thank you.
Brilliant. So our next fact: Black mothers are 5 times more likely to die in pregnancy, says the 2014 to 2016 UK Confidential Inquiry into Maternal Deaths. Next up, we have Jennifer Emendu doing her original poem, Do You Remember the Feeling?
Do you remember that feeling? The first time you took your natural hair out, the fear that came with it, giving in to the realization that no amount of Cantu can give you that loose wave you hope to attain. Do you remember that feeling? Yeah, it was a long time coming. You never questioned yourself until others questioned you. Why are your lips so big? Why is your nose so flat? You never questioned your skin until a kid said disgustingly, "Look like you." You wondered who taught him that Black equates to bad. You never questioned if you were really seen. Then your sister was told to be a good slave. Then you saw that some could only see you through the lenses of hate. You see, bit by bit, these things chipped at your self-esteem. According to your classmates, you were Bob Marley with braids, fake with a weave, and even with your damaged, relaxed hair that begged to be a part of this white society, you still didn't quite fit. And so you chopped it off. All the self-hatred that was quietly growing, all the media that taught you that Black people are either gangsters or slaves, all the history lessons that never praised, the achievements of Black people, the collective comments that over time made you feel less than enough. It couldn't withstand the liberating power that manifested through the big chop. Now, do you remember that feeling? The first time you took your natural hair out, pushing past fear and stepping into your glory, loving yourself wholly, proudly proclaiming that Black is beautiful. You are beautiful. And now you're growing new locks, one that embraces your mother tongues, your pounded yam and egusi soup, your vast history, your people, defiant like the Aba women who refused to be silenced, who challenged their colonizers, who birthed the movement to reclaim their land. You see, this power is embedded into the DNA of every gravity-defying kink and curl that takes its rightfully appointed place upon your crown. Your locks are bold and loud and unapologetic, like you. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, I love it. I love it. Please talk to us about that.
So essentially, I basically grew up in Nigeria up until I was about 8. So going from a place where everyone is basically Black to a place where I was the only one who really looked like me, it almost sparked a bit of an identity crisis where I kind of started to view myself in a more negative way. And obviously hearing all these comments that made you feel more foreign and more alienated, you kind of start to develop almost like a bit of a negative perception of yourself. So a big way of overcoming that was through the natural hair movement, which is essentially where I cut off all my relaxed hair and I started growing out my natural hair. And that was almost a journey of self-discovery. And what I found is a lot of Black women have the exact same experience, essentially. So that's what it's essentially about, and it's intended to remind people who've gone through that kind of experience of how far you've come, and to uplift you and just remind you that, man, Black is beautiful. So
yes, no, I love that, and I think it will ring true for a lot of people, especially like myself. It took me so long throughout my whole teenagehood and onwards. I would straighten my hair to death, to the point where it was breaking off in chunks. I was just so desperate to have hair like everyone else. So it's a big moment in your life when you go, do you know what, I'm going to embrace this. And yeah, it's so gorgeous. Like it makes you think, why did I ever at any point think I shouldn't have my hair like this? Thank you so much for sharing, Jennifer. That was brilliant. In 2019 to 2020, Black people had the lowest rate of unemployment. White people had the lowest. Black people had the lowest rate of unemployment. White people had the highest. Next, we have Priscilla Khan, and she is doing an original poem called At the Table.
Black skin, sculpted a nuanced rainbow of browns, its tones escaping one dimension, the outer shell that holds the depth of our core, filled with hopes, plans, dreams, rich in skill, adorned in culture, traditions that draw lines across maps, tribes that add definition, and even as diaspora, planted across a progressive world, our skin is an irreplaceable treasure box. Like diamonds in the rough, history hid our humanity in dark places. We have journeyed for truth, boycotted buses, held placards at parks, streets, petitioned and studied to be heard, as though our humanity was not enough to lend us a voice, but we persevered. One, change things. Like caged birds, pioneers past and present have sang till closed doors gave into daylight, their melodies of hope birthing seeds of change that challenge the status quo. We are the fruits of their labor. We are their unshackled self. We are becoming walking dreams, discovering our identity, stripping off false labels, taking a seat at the table. When I see skin, I see it sculpted complex, surrounded by context, a rainbow of stories, each shade relevant and intricately formed to give an individual an undefined uniqueness. So, thank you.
Oh, thank you. That was brilliant. Priscilla, tell us a bit about that.
I guess it was inspired by just reflecting on Black history, but also looking at where we are now as Black people, and actually just recognizing that there has been progress, even though there's like a lot more that needs to be done. I guess that the aim of the poem was to appreciate our hardship, but also say, look, as Black people, we're amazing. We deserve respect. We deserve dignity. We deserve to be seen and heard and actually feel like we have a seat at the table. And I guess one thing this year that I've been really passionate about is actually saying, like, being Black is actually a lot more than a color. Like, as the Black race, we're skilled, we have culture, there are so many nuances to us, you know. I may be from Ghana, someone else is from Nigeria, other people are of mixed race. So yeah, I guess that's what I tried to get across.
Yeah, and you got it across for sure. It was so beautifully written. Do you write often?
Yeah, so I write quite a lot of poetry. I feel like that's my bread and butter. Yeah, I do quite a lot.
Brilliant. It shows that you're well versed in it. It was a brilliant poem. Thank you for sharing it.
Thank you very much.
White students are twice as likely to achieve 3 A grades at A level. Black Caribbean pupils are almost twice as likely to be excluded than white students in 2016 to 17 academic year. Next up, we have Raisharnai Kitson with an original monologue called My Skin.
Hello everyone, I'm Raisharnai. As Shakira said, this is an original monologue called My Skin, and through it I explore what my skin means to me. My blackness was never just a colour for me. It was a symbol of my beauty, of my strength, of my intelligence. It told me that no matter what was thrown at me, I could handle it. That in any situation, the melanin running through my skin would always be there to give me everything I needed. It's strange to think that being raised in colour means being raised in black and white. I tell myself I wasn't raised in colour, except I was, just not black and white. Instead of seeing the white girl, I saw the red hair clip in her blonde hair. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the black girl. I saw my dark brown eyes, and how they almost look like they're full of sand under the light. This idea of colour was almost a shock to me. I knew of my history. I knew of the way my people were and still are seen, but I was always hopeful. Hopeful that people had forgotten their hatred. Hopeful that people could be decent and civil. Hopeful that grown men and women didn't believe in something children know is wrong. I knew of racism but could never actually discuss it outside of my family. Even when speaking about it at school, racism became the bleeding, pleading elephant in the room that was put in a dress to make it look better. Every single day I spent at school, I was met with blatant racial microaggressions, while simultaneously being told that the people doing this to me were not racist, but progressive. Looking back at my school years has been like walking through a house of mirrors. Sure, when I look at the mirrors, my life is reflected back at me, but I'm constantly running into glass panels trying to figure out what is and what isn't. Was my teacher stroking my hair without my permission racist? Were my classmates using words that connote the N-word and repeating variations of it racist? Or was I the racist one, like they said I was, for pointing it out? Other people hate my skin. I can see it when I enter a room. I see the way their faces cloud with spite and their eyes twist with envy. They hate how I exist in my skin, how I walk in it, how I wear it like armor whilst they see it as a weapon or a deficiency. They hate that no matter how many blades they throw at me, how many verbal chains they try to wrap me in, by suggesting that my skin isn't good enough, I can still stand and smile, even though I'm bleeding. Every time I get caught up in it all, in the hatred, in the anger, I look at my skin. I remind myself of how it encompasses everything that I am, because it gave me the power to be more than the stereotypes associated with my identity. I remind myself of how it connects me with my people and their victories. I remind myself that no matter what happens, everything is going to be okay because I have my skin, and that's all I need, no matter what color it is. Thank you for listening.
Oh, thank you, Raisharnai. That was gorgeous. Do you want to tell the audience a bit about what inspired that, where it came from, how you wrote it?
When I saw the thing, it was quite hard to sort of just sit down and speak about race, because I'm never actually allowed to speak about it. And even when speaking about it with teachers or being taught about it, it's sugar-coated and made to be better than it is. So my experience with race, I sort of blocked it out because I didn't want to deal with it, because growing up, and as in like, I was bullied a lot, and I was always telling myself, it's like, oh, because they're jealous of me, which they were, but it was more than that. It's because I was Black. They weren't jealous of me because I was smart and beautiful. They were jealous of me because I was smart, beautiful, and Black, and that was an issue. So looking at race and sort of coming to terms with it was really quite hard, because when I looked at the people around me, when I looked at my teachers, they were racist. So then you try to be vocal, you try to point it out, but then they're saying, you're racist, you're insulting me, I'm progressive. My school was complimented as leading the way into diversity, when actually I've had so many racist experiences, and even telling teachers they didn't mean it like that. It wasn't as bad as that. You need to be quiet. So it's sort of therapeutic in a way, to sort of acknowledging that I'm a victim of racism and it's wrong, and that I can finally speak about it.
Amazing. Yeah, I think a lot of us have been through that this year, especially being able to sort of filter through regressed memories and figure things out and realize, actually, do you know what? That was because I was Black, and it wasn't because I did anything wrong. And no matter how nice I was to people, I still got treated in a certain way, and the only common denominator is the fact that I'm Black and they weren't. I think it's really interesting that you bring up like talking to your teachers about it and then getting called racist yourself. That's something I haven't thought about in a long time, showing my age now, about, you know, confronting people and saying what you're doing is racist, and have them be like, no, it's not, let me tell you why I'm not racist. And it gets to a point where you end up not wanting to call people out on it because you think there's no point, you're not going to listen to me, and I'm end up going to be the bad person for bringing it up in the first place. So I think you've touched on a lot of really good themes throughout that, and yeah, that really hit home with me. Thank you.
Thank you.
In London in 2018, ethnic minorities earned 21.7% less than the rest of the population. Next up, we have Genevieve Osili doing her original poem called Flesh.
Hi, I'm Genevieve, and as Shakira said, I'm going to be doing my poem Flesh. When I was young, my skin didn't make sense. My flesh. I wanted to understand it, melanin diluted like the squash I would drink after school, an ever-present feeling of dissonance sitting heavy in my gut. Not fully black, not fully white, liminal by nature. How was it possible to feel alienated by your own skin? I questioned it. I questioned myself. I pulled on that thread and it unraveled, and I pulled and it unraveled, and even though it ripped apart my fibers, I didn't find an answer. I saw myself as an equation to solve, but maths isn't really my thing. I used to be quite good, but when I turned 17, I developed a crack in my skull, a small one at the base. Things started to leak out. I didn't notice at first, but when I did, the shame. I tried to speak about it, but the words spilled through the crack rather than off my tongue. Young tears stung my eyes. Why did it hurt to cry? Allow yourself to grow. When you plant seeds in a garden, you don't dig them up every day to see if they've sprouted. But I am not a plant. I'd like to be. It'd be easier. Wilting leaves, a sign I need water. But I am not. I am my father's daughter. I am black. Though my skin is described as NC30 caramel natural beige neutral medium 31 latte butterscotch. I am my mother's child. Strong-willed. I am my mother and my father and their mothers and their fathers, and now I understand. I'm not half a fraction, 1/2. I am an entirety. There's symbiosis in my cells. Perfect unison within. Thank you.
Oh, it's so lovely. Is this the one that you did for us last year as well?
No, so last year I did one about like ancestry and my parents, yeah.
This one, I love the naming off all the different ways that your skin tone has been described in all the different products. It's so ridiculous, isn't it, when you go to get makeup or something and you're like, oh,
what am I described as today?
Yeah, literally. Yeah, tell us a bit about how this poem came about.
So the poem's about, like, generally it's about confusion, sort of the confusion that everyone feels growing up, but when you're mixed race or like when you're black, or like race adds another element to it, and especially sort of where I grew up. And so my father was Nigerian and he passed away when I was 10. It meant that I didn't really have a sort of strong black influence around me. And similar to what you and Raisharnai were talking about before, that sort of if you brought up race at school, you were told you were playing the race card, or like, so you just learned to not talk about it. And also like at my school, again, I was one of 2 black girls in my year. All of the teaching staff throughout my entire time there were white. And it's like, you just knew not to bring it up. So it's sort of like the process that you had to go through growing up, unlearning the things that had been said to you. Like I'd been asked like, oh, so like, what does being half caste mean to you? And me being like, no, half caste isn't, that's not what you say. And then going, no, half caste is the correct way of saying it. And I was like, oh yeah, you would know, wouldn't you? And like being told like, oh, if you had to pick a side, which side would you pick? And I was like, am I playing like a game? Is it like choose your fighter type thing? Like, I don't. So yeah, it's just sort of, this poem was sort of my way of now being grown and coming to terms with all of that. Me sort of processing how I felt at the time.
Brilliant. It's an amazing feeling, isn't it, when you get to that age, at whatever age it may be for each individual person, and yeah, you start to realise and put things into perspective, and you start to realise that you've pushed so much stuff to the back of your head. And like I said earlier, it wasn't until recent years for myself, and especially this year with the BLM movement becoming as big as it is, just realizing how much bullshit you put up with as a kid, and to the point where you stop yourself from bringing it up because you're only going to get told, oh, you're bringing up the race card, oh, you always make everything about race, and then you end up being vilified for it. And then you stop bringing it up so many times to the point where you end up even realizing it's happening.
Yeah.
I got to a point where I almost believed that racism didn't happen because no one was outwardly calling me any racial slurs.
Yeah.
But they were still doing some mad shit. And now I reflect on it and I'm like, no, that was still pretty racist. And I was just unable to talk about it because I would have got shut down anyway. I was on my own. I was completely outnumbered. Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. And thanks for coming back.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Black households are more than 5 times more likely to be designated as statutory homeless in England. Next up is myself. I am doing a monologue called Statistics. No, I'm not being overdramatic, mate. That's like what, the 6th, maybe 7th time since I started working here that he said something dumb like, black people have to try harder to swim because their bones are denser. And the worst part, he says it with a smirk, with his chest. And no one pulls him up on it. Why should I, at my big age, an adult, a lifeguard, still be treated like an other and have to deal with it without saying anything? But that's just it, ain't it? You say you get it, but I don't think you do. I didn't realise I was different until others pointed it out. To me, people were people. I didn't even know what racism was until I was like 5, and some idiot in the playground started screwing up his face and calling me brownie, brownie. And even then I wasn't offended. I'm too young to be in brownies. I go to rainbows, I told him. Fucking Girl Scouts. It obviously got worse when I got into my teens, but it's only now that I'm grown that I'm really starting to understand just how deep it goes. It's not just institutions or the man trying to keep us down. We ourselves as black people have been training ourselves and each other how to act right and be perceived well for our own safety forever. Like my dad, right, used to take us swimming every Sunday and he'd make us do laps. Every other kid there was going down the slides and playing with the floats, and me and my sister were out of breath in the deep end, nose and lungs filled with chlorine as we pushed ourselves to reach the other side of the 25-metre stretch. We moaned, obviously, and complained about how unfair it was that the other kids got to play whilst we exhausted ourselves. But we still did it. Probably because we knew we'd get chicken nugget and chips afterwards. I was more confused about why we had to do laps than why we were the only black people in the place. I was used to us being the only ones, I guess. Dad says that's exactly it. That's why. He didn't want us to be just another statistic. The only black kids in town can't swim. It's funny, ain't it? He pushed us that hard to prevent us from being just another stereotype and then abandoned us. Now it's not the only black kids in town can't swim, but the only kids in town without a dad are black. How's that for a statistic? Thank you. So I wrote that for a wonderful project that I did over the summer with Ricky Beadle Blair and his company team Angelica. They are doing 3 monologue books, one which is written by and for members of the LGBTQIA+ community called Fierce, one for written by and for ethnic minorities called Lit, and one written by and for working class people called Common. I am a member of all three of those communities. So I was fortunate enough to be able to write a monologue in each of the books, which will be published by either the end of the year or the beginning of next year, which is really exciting. So make sure that you check out Team Angelica, make sure that you check out Ricky Beadle Blair, and keep an eye out for when they go on sale. Next, we have another fact. Between April 2018 and March 2019, there were 38 stop and searches per 1,000 Black people, compared to 4 per 1,000 white people. 38 stop and searches for Black people, compared to 4 for the white people. Next, we have Kiren Kebaili-Dwyer doing a monologue from Crowning Glory.
Hello, I'm Kiren Kebaili-Dwyer, and yeah, I'll be doing an extract from Crowning Glory by Somalia Seaton. You see, back at the restaurant, I stood there not knowing whether to laugh or cry. I was thinking, do you think there's some sort of different rule for me? Like, maybe I don't need to wash my hair because it's magic hair and it magically cleans itself. But I didn't want no apology. Like, I grew up around these very liberal, do-gooder people who were curious by my skin and sometimes this hair. They felt like they were doing me a favor by fixating on my complexion and sometimes the fluffiness of this hair, but I don't even like this hair. I don't understand this hair. I don't want this hair. I feel like a flipping poodle most of the time. I spent my whole youth looking like a brown poodle. I had no one that looked like me growing up. Not friends, not family, it was just me. And I can pass for all sorts, like Spanish, Armenian, Brazilian, but this hair, it's like wearing a sign on your head that says, my mum fucked a Black guy and here's what he left me. Here's what he left her. And of course, he left her because that's what they do. They screw easy white women and leave them to raise a Black child that doesn't know how to be Black. Leaves them to face scrutiny from both sides of them, to try and figure out what side is actually ready to welcome them. That encounter back at the restaurant got me feeling like I'm not good enough. It's got me thinking about school, about family parties, the feeling of standing out and being different and being Black when I really didn't feel it. To trying to bond with others similar to me, only to be met with hostility and to be told that I think that I'm better than them because I'm somewhat lighter. This encounter has got me feeling like I really just don't belong anywhere with anybody. Make an excuse and go home. Hey, I'm feeling mad tired, you know. I say, I'm feeling uncomfortable, but I should be brave. This is when I should tell her the power of her words. Tell her that this encounter's got me feeling like I'm not white enough, like I'm not Black enough, and all I actually want to do is cry. But I can't, obviously. Instead, can we get the bill, please? Thank you.
So weird just having me here clapping for you, isn't it? And there's no audience. That was amazing. Yeah, tell us a bit about what made you choose this monologue.
Yeah, well, it's a monologue that I encountered a long time ago. I saw someone else do it, and it was really weird, the feeling of finally seeing a monologue, a contemporary monologue that really kind of connects with your journey, and like really like talks on things that you felt that you don't have to really kind of work hard to try and grasp, oh my God, that's what it feels like. And it was always quite annoying for me that it was really hard to find plays like that. And Crowning Glory, especially like the whole play by Somalia Seaton, it was one of the first ones I just grabbed and just held on tightly to. But then I didn't encounter it again for a long time until I ended up on Rap Man's kind of Instagram Live, and it was the only thing that I could remember a little bit of. And now that I'm kind of coming nearer to the end of my journey as I go into third year at Central, this was kind of an opportunity for me to kind of close it all off again. Like, this was something that I visited right before I started training. And now it was kind of my way of going, oh, I'd love to kind of revisit something that younger actor Kiren really loved. So it's been a really, really fun exploration for me. So yeah, it's been great.
Was that mad? Like now you've had 3 years, or nearly 3 years of training, all the techniques, and rereading it again. Do you feel like you get much more out of it now?
It was so odd because I reread the whole play, and this monologue is very long. Like it's like 7 pages long. So I just kind of scrapped the whole one that I used to do and just re-put it back together. And it was just such a liberating feeling to kind of get excited about new bits of lines and like to really just forget about what it was like and stuff like that. And especially because obviously I've been doing quite a bit of writing as well with yourself on the Ricky Beadle Blair project as well. Like it was really nice to kind of come away from own writing and revisit something that is like a little bit just away. So it's been, yeah, it was really fun. Like I loved it. It's given me a little break from 3rd year, so it's been great.
You could tell you were having fun with it. And to be honest, if you had said, you would have got sued if you said that this was yours, but if you had said it was yours, I would have believed it. It came naturally to you, and it fit your casting and everything. And I think, yeah, it's a brilliant monologue. I'm going to go read that whole play now. You've sold it to me. You've done your job.
Like really, thank you to Somalia Seaton for writing such a beautiful play. But yeah, that's what I have.
Oh, thank you so much, Kiren. Black people serve prison sentences that are 50% longer than white counterparts. Young Black defendants are twice as likely to be denied bail. Next up, we have Georgia-Mae Myers doing her original monologue called Mixed Up.
When I was 6, I asked my mum why I was the only brown girl in class that didn't wear a sari. She didn't know what to say. What she should have said was that a sari is a traditional South Asian garment worn predominantly by people with South Asian heritage, and I wasn't that, so I didn't have one. Instead, she just smiled and bought me a sari from the charity shop. I wore it for 10 days straight, danced around in it, slept in it, started to smell after a while, but I didn't care because I loved it that much. Kind of messed up, really. But I don't blame my mum. Like, what was she supposed to say? Tell me I was brown because my dad was Caribbean but didn't care enough to stick around? What a cliche. And I guess it wasn't easy for her, you know, single mum, living on benefits, carting around a kid that didn't look like her, the looks, the comments. You know, one guy actually told her that she was damaged goods after she'd been with my dad. Didn't get much better for me either, really. You know, feeling like you always had to prove yourself to people. No, but where are you from? Or, oh, but you don't act Black. Well, when your mum's white and your family's white and your neighbourhood is predominantly, shock, white, your identity gets kind of skewed. Not Black enough to be Black, not white enough to be white, just mixed up in the middle somewhere. I guess it's why I love that sari so much. Because for a split second, I felt like I fit in somewhere. Like I had a place, like I could tick one box. Because if there's one thing I've learned about being mixed race is that there is not a one box fits all. We are just a pool of ambiguity of Spanish, Armenian, or Jamaican, Colombian, Irish, or Japanese, Syrian, French, Algerian. We are everything and somehow nothing. What I'm trying to say is sometimes I wish I just had one box. Thank you.
What? That was unreal. Sorry to the audience. My reaction is like, what? Because earlier on, Georgia said that she wrote this in like an hour or two.
Yeah.
Imagine having that much talent. Right, tell the audience how this came about.
Well, I heard about this opportunity and I saw original writing and I was just like, let's give it a go. So I'm currently training with Kiren, who you just saw at Central, and they're always telling us to write and create and make new things. So I thought, let's put it into practice. 3rd year now, got to do it. So it just came out.
You're telling me this is a Rush-inspired piece?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Guys.
Yeah.
Changing the world.
It's true.
No, it was brilliant. Oh, every little nuance in it is. I'm nicking that. I'm having that. I'm doing that.
Love it. Love it.
Thank you so much, Georgia.
Thank you.
Thanks. Nearly a third of all police custody deaths in the past 2 years were involving Black people. Next up, we have Hana Jennings doing an original monologue called Mixed Girl, White Mum.
Look at it. I mean, just look at it. Look at my fucking hair. It just won't cooperate. The amount of time I spend on my hair is a joke. No, the amount of money I spend on my hair, that's a joke. No, the amount of time I spend talking about my hair, that's the joke. Oh my God, is your hair naturally that curly? Yes. Oh my God, that's a lot of hair, isn't it? Yes. Have you ever straightened it? Yes. How long does it take to do? A long time. Your hair's lovely, thanks. And the pièce de résistance, the one we've all been waiting for. Ladies and gentlemen, drum roll, please. I wish I had hair like yours. No, you don't. You don't want to spend hours trying to detangle it. You don't want to go traipsing around the shops trying to find hair care products that actually work for your hair, only to find a tiny little slither of shelf space right at the very end of the aisle. Plus, everything on that shelf space is 3 times the price of every other product you just walked past. You don't want to have to worry about your hair being deemed unprofessional because it's just in its natural state or in a style that protects it. You don't want to have spent your childhood being self-conscious of your hair because when you were little, strangers would come up to you and just start touching it. And then subsequently, you'd never wear your hair out again. But then, because you never wear your hair out, you get comments like, oh, but your hair's so lovely. I bet your hair looks amazing out. Why don't you wear your hair out? Because people like you would keep touching it. My mum didn't like people touching my hair either. Because, well, obviously I didn't like it and it made me feel uncomfortable. And in all honesty, it's just a bit fucking weird. Some random touching your child's hair. But also because she spent a long time on it, right? And someone's just going to walk over and mess it all up. See, my mum had to figure it all out by herself. She spent a long time on my hair. See, my mum is a 5 foot, blue-eyed, straight, blonde-haired white lady. What the fuck was she supposed to do with all this hair? But she figured it out. And she put so much care into looking after it. And I love my white mum so much for taking care of my black hair so lovingly. And so to round this little bit off, no, you don't want my hair. But I do. I like my hair. And I quite like wearing it out now. My hair was never the problem. It was everyone else. So, fuck 'em. Thank you.
Get out of my head! Get out of my head! How did you know that? How did you know that was my life? Talking about, with Kiren earlier, talking about finding like relatable content, and tonight's has been like, whoa, where was this when I was growing up? I would have felt so much better. This is why we need this. This is why we need showcases like this. Tell me about it.
Yeah, I mean, this is like an extract from something that I've been working on, tinkering with for a few years called, I've named it Mixed Girl White Mum. Oddly enough, like a lot of people who have just performed tonight, like I grew up with just my white mum in a white area, and I didn't really see myself shown or represented a lot. And I think growing up without that black culture or that black influence makes you feel a bit like, I don't know who I am or what's going on or where I sit or where I place in this world. And I just thought maybe it might be nice to write something that reflects that. There's a lot to work through there. But this particular little bit is like, I was just thinking recently about how I never used to wear my hair out as a kid. Like never. It wasn't until the age of like 17 or 18 that I started wearing it out. And I was like, why did I do that? And it was really interesting looking back and exploring why. Yeah, so that's what that was about.
It's amazing. I can't wait to see the whole finished piece. No, honestly, I'm like hooked. Like, give me more.
Oh, that's so lovely. This is like the first time I've ever written something, so yeah, that's really nice to hear.
You lot are just straight flexing on me today. Georgia's like, I wrote this in an hour. You're like, I've never written anything before, and then just giving me complete gold. Again, all of which I'm going to steal for myself. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us again on Rush, Hana.
Thank you for having me.
A new study has shown that people from Black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds experience high levels of depression and anxiety. Black men are 17 times more likely to be diagnosed with a serious mental health condition than their white counterparts. And to finish off the performances for tonight, we have Yemi Yohannes doing an original poem called Ode to Babylon.
Thank you. Okay, so this is my spoken word poem called Ode to Babylon. This is my ode to Babylon, listen up. This is my time to expose your cover-up. I'll start where it all started, the cradle of humanity. Mama Africa, Mama Earth. She's been wronged by her offspring, and since the day of your birth, you stole the gold and the fruits that she bears. Painted them with your Western brush of greed and corruption, and then sold them for profit. For centuries we bowed, but see now the kingdom is coming, and you can't stop it. To the UK government, you are not innocent. Your subtle racism ingrained had us all chained and restrained, but see, we are the originals. We're the blueprints, and we are destined for greatness, and you are most definitely not blameless. This is my ode to Babylon, speak up. Your statues have fallen, but the point still stands. Black lives matter. Your racist illusions we will shatter. Edward Colston dethroned, Winston Churchill defaced. Your proudly racist leaders finally disgraced. For who they are and what they stand for, fuck their views, we'll tear them down to the floor. Bring them back down to planet Earth where we are all equal and you don't decide our worth. This is my ode to Babylon, wake up. Let's talk about the curriculum. You don't even cover the minimum. Our history and your syllabus have never met. You're villainous, stuck erased from the textbooks. It was never written, but this is your so-called Great Britain. Teach children Black history and see if they follow in your racist ways, because we can't be born racist, it's how we're raised. The world maps are disproportionate, it's fucking extortionate. This is the power of representation and your representation of power. She is far bigger than you and all your big man governments combined. You can't compare, but this shit still isn't fair. The sneers and sniggers at the word niggers is all your curriculum offered our people. Then you pretend to support the minorities. The art of pretending you've mastered. You're full of lies, you bastards. Forget your pride, educate your youth, this is your doing. We grew up with weekly show and tell as our fun. Well, now's your turn, show and tell them what you've done. This is my ode to Babylon, stand up. Use the press to delude society, to oppress. You work so hard to prove that we are less, but we all know it's bullshit, so it's even worse the stress. The arts industry, what a mess. The BBC deprived us of seeing people of colour on our screens and then banned employees from publicly supporting the cause by any means. Forced through your education factory since day. You can be anything you want, they say, but see, I want to be an artist. The people that you, Boris Johnson, call non-essential and low skilled. You tried to tell people that we're slacking, but Black representation in UK theatre is massively lacking. So Rishi Sunak tells us to retrain. When you guys are the ones to blame, your future battles to make something of our lives is uphill, simply because we don't fit your bill. This is my ode to Babylon, rise up. Our features of Black beauty tainted by your ugly hearts means we're set up to fail before we even start. Your capitalist brands scream diversity, yet we still can't find our shade. So where the fuck do we fit in on your range? Diversity, let them call and complain. Let them have a taste of our rage and our pain. This is my ode to Babylon, pull up. You deserve to be named, shamed and blamed. You man sat comfortably at the top of society with lives in your hands. Prosecute the police, what the fuck don't you understand? No justice, no peace, and no racist police. For the colour of our skin, we end up deceased. Black skin is not a crime. Being Black is not a crime. Yet Black people are almost 10 times more likely to be stopped and searched in the UK. This shit is absurd. Don't you see the message that you portray? Your teachings of morality and legality diminished by police brutality help us to see the facade that you hide behind, corrupting mankind, concealing the fact that you are the niggers you search our streets so desperately for. to fill the prisons, to fill the stereotypes and statistics. You started a war. All this because we might look like trappers, but you see, we are trapped by you trappers in your airtight Babylon, and we can't breathe. I've come to realize that I'm too emotional to accept the world for what it is. I take it too personally. You create a racial war zone and then claim it was our doing. This institutionalized racism needs subduing. Now is the time for you to reap what you sow. You turn us against each other, then scream black on black violence. This is a new low. You won't take responsibility, so I'm here to give it to you. I'm gonna be the change that you don't want to see, a voice for the people that don't have it in them to scream this message anymore. Black lives matter. You whitewash our history, but the century is the 21st. You can't box us up and ship us away no more, so please do your worst. Comfortably seated at the top of Babylon, you man get the bird's eye view. To you, we're nothing, but we are everything. We are united, army is rising, and soon we'll reach you too. You think you're untouchable, but we're starting to rumble the foundations and watch it all crumble. This is my ode to Babylon. Listen up. Thank you.
Oh, every time I hear it, I'm just like, amazing. tell them how you feel it.
Okay, so I don't normally write poetry, but I think this was something that came after a lot of the Black Lives Matter movement when it peaked, especially on social media. We were all in lockdown. It was all a bit crazy, and I had to take the time to process how I felt about things. And the biggest thing for me, I think, was racial gaslighting. Like looking back on my past, even growing up, I went to like a predominantly white Catholic school, and so racism was so prominent there, and it was at the same time something that was just completely not spoken about. And so anything that I felt was racist, it was like passed off as you're overreacting, you know, you're being dramatic, or he didn't mean it like that, or it wasn't supposed to, you know, offend you, etc., etc. But you're looking back on all of these things, and the good thing about the Black Lives Matter movement is that so many people were educated on what is racist and what isn't. And so now, even, you know, I was educated myself as a Black person, and that helped me realize that actually this is literally ridiculous. Like, you know, this is so many situations where it has been racist, and I've been told, you know, I've been shut down, I've been told, you know, you're overreacting. And so for me, it was really important to kind of get exactly how I felt out on, you know, different topics and stuff. But at the same time, it was kind of redirecting that energy towards a lot of where I think the source of racism comes from in the UK, and that is, to me, the government. I think there's a lot of institutionalized racism, and things are so normalized, and they shouldn't be. And so I kind of came back with a vengeance, if that makes sense. Like, I kind of woke up to it, and I thought, okay, you know what, I'm not wrong, and now is my time in terms of activism, in terms of talking about it and having those difficult conversations to try and spark that up with people, and hopefully make a difference with people close to me first, especially.
Amazing. It's really nice to hear, as someone who has a similar experience to you this year of going back through past stuff and realizing that a lot of it was down to my race, and just seeing things again with fresh adult eyes. It's really nice to hear, not only from yourself, but from a number of people on the show tonight, and just from a number of people in my life, that they've gone through that together. And it's kind of like that healing. It's one step to healing what has happened and moving forward, and hopefully eradicating it eventually from future Black children's lives. I think one thing that's been really poignant for me tonight is how much people have spoken about what happened at school. And how a lot of us were affected at school. So I think that's definitely something we should discuss now in a minute in our little discussion section. So for our audience, we're now going to have a little brief discussion about Black history, about BLM and how that's affected us this year, and just what it's been like growing up in Britain as a Black person. If you've got any questions surrounding those topics or surrounding the pieces that you've seen tonight, please in the comment section ask us some questions, and we'll hopefully get around to them. Cool. So guys, I think firstly, let's have a chat. I'm going to open it up to everyone. Let's have a chat about how the 2020 Black Lives Matter movement this year has affected us. Just pop your hand up if you want to go first, or just jump in with your microphone off. Yeah, Raisharnai?
It was quite a shock, to be honest, and to this day, like, I still can't watch any of the videos. I think I woke up one morning and I accidentally saw like the Ahmaud Arbery one. I went to my mum and I was like, Mum, I was crying, and I think I'm going to cry now thinking about it. But it was so awful. And I think me and my mum, well, my mum's, we've seen the pictures and we'll analyze it forever. Like the way the man kneeled on his neck, and he was so confident because he's like, nothing's going to happen to me. Nothing has happened to him. And Breonna Taylor, he wasn't charged for killing her. He was charged for the shots he missed. And that's sinking in. It's ridiculous. And I think, in a way, I was sort of insulted. I was glad that people were speaking about it, but I'm like, it shouldn't have to take this many people dying in such quick succession for you to be like, oh, this is kind of bad. And I remember I think I was in year 8 having a debate about Black Lives Matter, and what is, we were talking about, what is it? Should it be necessary? Why is it a thing? Like, should they shut up? And that was honestly a question posed to the class, like, oh, should they really be talking about Black Lives Matter? And loads of white boys, to be in particular, were saying slavery ended a long time ago, they should shut up now. And that was the theme. And instead of teachers going, actually no, that's wrong, it was, oh, I see your point, or I get where you're coming from, to the point where I had to stand up and I was like, no, it's because people are being killed and that's not okay. So I think, but that's the negative side of it. But seeing everyone talk about Black Lives Matter, like you were just saying, it sort of gave me like, it was therapeutic, in which I like looked at repressed memories and I sort of thought, oh my God, like this isn't a new thing. This isn't something that I've sort of just woken up and looked at. This is through my life since I was a child, since before I was born. This was like happening. And it's only talking about it and hearing certain stories of me saying like, oh, that kid said I was poo, or he called me poo in French, or a teacher touched my hair, or someone said the N-word to me and they said it was a joke. I'm like, that's racism. And like Yemi was talking about gaslighting, I thought we gaslight ourselves because we know that if we say it's racism, we get shut down. You have to live with the injustice of knowing that someone has hurt you, and then they're allowed to do that.
Thank you. Has anyone else got anything they'd like to add about their experience this year with the BLM movement? Yemi?
I just wanted to quickly make a comment about, obviously it gained a lot of attention, which was amazing for the movement, and it was so important that happened. But in all of that, it's very easy to kind of get confused between who was genuine and who was kind of posting for the sake of posting. And that was something that was really grinding my gears. I remember I used to talk to my best friend about it all the time, because when there's like chain posts, I remember I was tagged in a few where people were tagging 10 people on their story and a hashtag of Black Lives Matter and all of this Blackout Tuesday. And I understand that a lot of the time the intention is good, but from my point of view, a lot of it was quite frustrating because people are dying for this cause, and people are suffering every day, whether it be just in our everyday lives or in other countries where it's literally, so affecting for them. And so to kind of almost belittle the cause to just a trend was something that I really struggled to come to terms with, and something that was also just a thing of, of course it's important to be vocal, and of course it's important to be, fighting for this cause and helping people who don't necessarily have a voice. But in that, you just need to be careful, I think, sometimes what you're doing, and if it's just to be showy, or if it's just to make sure that people know that, you're not racist, and you've done this and that's enough, and it's not. So I think that was definitely something about the movement that was kind of bittersweet. It was a bit of a weird thing to experience, but now looking back on it, I think, that was what something I think that affected me most. But
yeah, that's an interesting one, actually. It was similar for myself. At first it was just a manic time for, I'm sure, everyone in this group. So many emotions at all different times, like Raisharnai said, one minute I'm feeling fine, and next minute I'm either seeing a horrible picture or just thinking about what's going on and just bursting out into tears. It was a super emotional time. But I think the hardest thing for me, and the thing that actually ended up getting me quite angry, was seeing people not posting at all, still post about their mundane, boring lives, which I'm like, okay, there's bigger things going on right now. Or the people who were posting like the black square, or were posting things and, maybe going to a protest or two, but not actually reaching out to the Black people in their lives. I think that's a really big thing that's been happening throughout a few people that I've spoken to recently, is they've kind of been like, yeah, no, my friends they've been super vocal online, but none of them actually bothered to ring or text me to see how I was doing. which is really interesting. So yeah, I think it's really hard to navigate what is genuine and what is not. I think them sharing in general is great because it's going to reach other people, and it's spreading that word. And we saw where it spread like wildfire. And I think the reason why it is the biggest Black rights movement ever is because of social media and how fast we can spread information. It's the same with what's recently happening in Nigeria with the End SARS campaign. None of us would know about that if it wasn't for social media. So social media is a fantastic tool. But yeah, it's really hard to sort of sift through the genuine people and the people who aren't, for sure. Georgia?
I think I can speak on behalf of me and Kiren with this, but because we're both studying at a drama school and the institutionalized racism that runs through those kind of places, it's just been interesting to see how they've dealt with that and how they've addressed certain issues. I know like people have spoken out about things that have happened while being at Central. So that's just been really interesting how they've dealt with that. And obviously with the principal and everything going on there, it's been a crazy time. Do you want to jump in, Kiren? I don't know whether you were going to speak about that as well. I saw your hand.
Jump in on that, because so at the moment, along with another classmate of ours, Penna, I'm currently the SU Vice President of Acting over there. So the SU basically I'm helping out. They do like votes, and we get put into the SU and stuff like that in order to try and kind of support the people within our cohort. So I kind of talk for the 3 acting courses because we have acting, musical theatre and CDT. So it's been really personal for me, I think would be my answer to all of this. It's been a lot of pain. And I think it was my experience, again, I don't want to speak for everybody, but my experience on the course that we do, which is acting CDT, was really quite positive. It was really lovely enough, and we always get described as being in a little bubble, and we didn't really understand what was going on outside of that and in some of the other places. So it was really, really, I think, hard to kind of come around and see all of that, and then to like kind of really have it take a toll personally, because I was so involved, like even with like media, like because I was very, very involved with the first march that Naomi started and stuff like that. When the media started like lying, I felt it so personally when they were saying, oh yeah, the protest wasn't meant to go on the streets and people were jumping over this gate and da-da-da-da-da. Like I sat there and read it and just cried, because I was like, how can you do this when I know about all the organization that's gone into it, when I know how hard everything was pushed to like make sure that everybody had masks and that to make sure that people were trying to be socially distant, and then it's just put into this whole different thing. And I think that was also really interesting, really making me kind of see what media's like, and because I kind of knew firsthand, oh my God, that's a lie. And I started to look at all the media and go, what is true and so it's been mad personal, I think, is the main thing, especially with so many students kind of coming forward and speaking like just about really hard things. It's been crazy.
Does anyone else have anything they want to add? Priscilla?
Yeah, just to add, I think for me overall, it's just been like an extremely exhausting and a draining year, just seeing Black trauma and Black death played out right before our eyes on a public stage, and being able to side with so many stories that were spoken about. And I just felt that it was just so sad that so much pain had accumulated until we were actually heard and taken seriously. But I guess one necessary thing that this year has done is that it's put pressure on people to change. It's put pressure on people to educate themselves. Like during the Black Lives Matter protests and the ongoing conversations, like so many sectors, so many high profile people have made commitments. And I think it's good in terms of being able to hold them to account and say, okay, you said this year. If there hasn't been change next year, we can refer back to this year and say, okay, like, what are you actually doing now? Because you said that you were going to change. You said that you were going to educate yourself. So I think that's been not a bright side, but a necessary side of this year.
Sure, definitely. Hart?
And also, like, to Priscilla's point about being exhausted as well, it's like when we are collectively grieving over what we're seeing happening in the world and know to be true and know to be happening, to have people check in on you in a way that doesn't actually take into account the emotional state of the people they're checking in on. It's like coming in like a wrecking ball to be like, and how are you? And it's like, oh no, because they want their own personal performance of race trauma. They want their own personal performance of being as close as possible to Black folks and Black pain and feel like they are helping and healing. And sometimes it's like, you can't help or heal. You just need to be quiet and listen and make change where you can make change. Rather than like, it makes you feel even more like less of a human. It makes you feel like some sort of zoological experiment, and they just want to get like as close to the cage as they possibly can. And like that, on top of everything else, so many final straws that just keep breaking the camel's back. But yeah.
That's a really interesting one. How would you... So I've obviously complained that not enough people checked in on me, but I completely understand where you're coming from with regards to it. Where's the line? Like, what? How can, for the white audience watching who have Black friends, how can they approach us in a way? I guess we're sort of a bit past the initial bit now. I'm very, and I'm sure everyone else here is very open to having these conversations, but where is that line, and where it is a genuine conversation about what's going on and I want to be involved in this? Kiren?
Hart, if you wanted to go first, go ahead, because I know you guys were.
I was just going to say really quickly, something that I was telling people was like this really simple like litmus test, where you just like ask yourself before you do something, ask yourself the question, how does this intrinsically help person X, or how does this intrinsically help the movement or a Black person? And if you have a vague answer, or the answer is not at all, then you need to rethink. I really liked the messages and the text that didn't even require an answer from me. Things just thinking of you, checking in, here if you need, not how are you?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I even appreciated the ones which were a bit sneaky, kind of like replying to the story, ha ha ha, that's so funny, we're chatting about the story, and then they're kind of like, how have you been anyway? I appreciate that. You've eased your way in. Kiren, what were you going to say?
I think for me, I appreciate how hard it actually is. And I think it's a very individual thing. And there's certain friends that I would be very open to like asking me how I am and stuff like that. But there's certain people, if they said that, I'd be like, wait, you're just asking because of this. Do you got like, so I think I do really appreciate how like people can just be there and not know what the right thing is to do. And for me, I think the best fix behind that is to just remain really open and to remain really kind of susceptible to what you're getting back. And I think it's just about that kind of reaction, that if someone does tell you, okay, that wasn't the right way to go about it, not to just throw stuff out the window and go, I can't do it anymore, but it's just to listen to that. Because yeah, like I think very much for me, it's at certain times I wanted to be asked, at certain times I didn't want to be asked. So how can I expect someone else to guess what the heck they're meant to do today? Because it's been such a mad time. So yeah, I think it's about everybody, not just Black people, not just white people, but everybody just being more open to what the actual struggles are at the moment.
A really interesting one. Did anyone at any point get the a phone call or a text from someone who has been racist to them in the past in some way to try and abolish their guilt? I just want to see like a show of hands. Did anyone get that? That's so interesting. I didn't know if I was the only one. That's all. I just wanted to check. Which again is a really interesting topic, because I don't think it came from any malice. I had a few. I don't think they came from any malice. I think it came from a genuine, I've woken up, I've realised what I said wasn't okay. And I need to discuss this with you. But yeah, if anyone's watching and you've ever been racist, even if it was an accident, just think about, will it help the other person for you to bring it back up again and try and apologise? Because 9 times out of 10, they've probably grown through it and grown past it. And it got to a point for myself personally where I was just like, look, I am not the white guilt abolisher. Like, you can't come to me and I like do a spell and we go back in time and we go back to that moment and you grab your own lips and stop yourself from saying it. It's happened. I've moved past it. I'd rather not talk about it anymore. Let's just move forward. So I just think it's really interesting because I know we've got a complete mixture of ethnicities in the audience, and I'm sure there's a lot of white people who are still sort of just figuring it out as we are ourselves. And it's good to just give them a few tips on how to navigate around this situation. Georgia?
I think there's like a huge thing, especially in Britain and British culture, of being courteous and kind to people and polite, that people are afraid to say that they've been wrong, I think, or change their mind on something, or learn a different thing, and maybe they've posted something that was wrong and they've learned from it, and then but they feel like afraid to be like, oh no, and like, it gets a bit in a muddle. But I feel that is like a major thing, that people should just be open and honest, and yeah, I messed up. Like, I've done it before as a mixed race woman. I have like said the wrong thing to different people, and you get with pronouns as well, like there's like a major thing, a movement of, if you say the wrong thing, learn from it, don't do it again. Like, and it's fine to say that you're wrong and move by it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think there's like a major thing where people feel like it's wrong to say that they were wrong, or that they've changed or learned a new thing. So yeah.
Human nature, isn't it? As humans, we just don't want to admit when we're wrong. See, it goes back to being a little kid, and when you do something wrong and you blame it on your sibling because, like, you don't want to get in trouble. So even, especially when it comes to things like this, it's such a big thing. And I know a lot of people do not want to admit to themselves that they are racist. And I mean, it can happen in any way, you know. Like you just said, Georgia, as a mixed race person, you could do it yourself in another way. The issue, well, the point is to accept it, acknowledge it, apologize for it, and move on. It doesn't do anyone good for you to beat yourself up about it, and it doesn't do the other person good for you to constantly be going on about it. We have a few questions from the audience, so let's have a look at those, shall we? I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. So a question from Hemelness Speaks says, most of the pieces talk about mistakes made, truths hidden. What one thing will any of you be doing differently from today onwards? Ooh, does anyone want to take that one?
Probably not. Oh, sorry. Yeah, you go.
Raisharnai?
I think Jennifer's piece about hair, I think I started a journey of like going through my natural hair, but like I never wore my hair out, but it wasn't because people told me I couldn't. It was like I knew that people would touch my hair, and I sort of like I have a friend who, like, I'm quite strong-willed, but my friend isn't, and I'm gonna cry again, but she loves her natural hair and she'll wear it out and it looks beautiful, and mine spend ages on it and it just looks lovely. And 2 white boys wanted to touch it and she said, I don't want you touching my hair. And they held her down and touched her hair, and it was so awful. I didn't know what to do about it, and she didn't know what to do about it, so she just like smoothed herself out and walked on, and we didn't speak about it, and I didn't talk to her about it because it was traumatizing to watch. It must have been traumatizing to speak about. And like throughout my life, because I usually wear braids because I like braids, like I don't know, I just like them, and I've usually had to fight people off, like, I don't want you touching my hair, I don't like it when you touch my hair, please don't touch my hair, and like physically like remove someone from trying to touch my hair. But I want to wear my natural hair out because I love natural hair and I just love like the way it looks and love the way it works. So I think one thing I'm going to change is like stop beating myself up for not wearing it, and like just sort of love my hair as it is or as it isn't.
Nice. I love that. I think one thing for myself, one thing that I am working on and still need to change, is really weird. I'm a very forthcoming person. I'm very much someone who will tell you when you've annoyed me or when you've upset me. However, when I see people or hear people say things like accidentally say half caste instead of mixed race, or even to the extreme sometimes of some, normally I pick people up on it, but sometimes when someone will sing the N-word, but I can see it in their face that they really didn't fucking mean it. I'm really bad at not addressing it as strictly as I should. I'll say, you shouldn't, you're not allowed to say that. But I think I've let, in my lifetime, which is many years, I've let far too many people off with little things. And I think moving forward, a big thing for me today is just to remind people, even if they're not saying it with any malice and they really didn't mean to say it in any way, is to be like, okay, although you don't mean to do it, you need to teach yourself, you need to program yourself to not say it.
So I didn't mean to see, it's really interesting that you say that, sorry, because I'm just laughing to myself over here. But the piece that I wrote for Ricky Beadle-Blair is all about that, which is about, it's called 079 Me, and it's all about calling things out. And it's just, because I think that is what, to answer the question, that's what, for me going forward is the important thing, is like being able to stand up for who you actually are in whatever way that is. So yeah, no, it was weird. Like it's like everybody's been reading people's minds, but yeah, it's like calling out the little things and standing up for your right to be you. Because for me, it's like letting those little things like slide is what just eats away at you every day, and then eventually it just all builds up. So yeah.
I was just going to add on to that about how whilst it's also important for, like, if I hear something, I want to call someone out, but I want to make sure, I want to look at the people in the room around me and go, wait, why am I the only one? Why am I having to be responsible for this all the time? Yeah. So I feel like it's not just calling out the person who's necessarily said something, but it's calling out friends and things and going, wait, you know that's made me uncomfortable. I know you feel uncomfortable that I'm uncomfortable. So why aren't you saying something? Why are you now waiting for me to have to defend myself constantly when I'm the one who's been attacked in this sort of situation? So I think, yeah, it's sometimes, yeah, a lot of the time calling people out, but it's also protecting yourself and making sure that the people around you are doing the same for you. Yeah, for sure. And I think that's something that's come up a lot in a few of our pieces this evening, is like that whole thing of not wanting to call people out on racism and to tell people that's racist, because after a while of being told, you're being racist, you're playing the race cards, it's always you starting arguments, blah, 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 you get programmed into our head to not want to do it anymore. And I think it's so deep into my subconscious that even now, at my big age, at 25, I will not let anyone talk shit to me about anything ever. But then if someone will accidentally sing the N-word, or someone will accidentally say, call me half-caste, or anything, something small like that, well, it's not small, but in comparison to what could have been said, I'll let it slide, because it's so deep in my head to not bother calling people out on it. But I think it does take a lot of pressure off of me as a person, because I've had to go through all of that. If my white friends around me go, you're not allowed to, you shouldn't say that, you're not allowed to say that, because then that's not on me, and I'm no longer the angry black lady who's telling everyone and playing the race card. So if anyone's watching and they're ever in that situation, even if your friend doesn't mean it and your black friend sat there not saying anything, maybe just say, that's not okay, because it takes a lot of pressure off of us. We've got another question here. From Jess. Oh, my friend Jess. What do you think the future should look like for the theatre industry now that awareness has been raised by BLM? How do we want to change the industry?
I think I don't know if all of you guys have seen it, but over here there is this amazing sort of huge collective of theatre writers, makers, actors, costume designers called We See You White American Theatre. I really encourage everyone to look at their website, look at their list of demands, because like top to bottom, every facet and area of the industry, they say, we see you, we see the way you act, we see the way you treat us, and these are the clear, actionable demands we are making that you must change. And so if anybody wants to like really dig into the weeds of that, they are an amazing organization doing incredible work.
Yeah, I think if we don't have one here in England, we need to make one, because that is so important. That is so important. Raisharnai?
I'm quite new to the industry, but I think they need to like a lot of the time when I see Black people, it's them putting themselves out there, and it's not like they've sat down and said they're going to do it. It's they've sat down and decided that they're going to do it, and they have to fight loads of people to get there. Even when they're doing it, they're still fighting people to like be seen. And like, even if it's in the chorus, it's just so their face can be there. And I think it needs to stop being like, I think a lot of the time, in order to avoid the blame for racism, like people just sort of leave it up to the Black people, like, okay, they want to be involved, like, you know, let them do it. And that's like, it shouldn't be, it doesn't happen for white people, so it shouldn't happen for Black people. And I think when presenting Black people, it needs to move away from racism, because there's this idea that Black people are only their oppression and they're only like slaves and all this like racist thing. And it's like, I saw like a video the other day, is like, and this guy was basically saying, I want to see a film or a show where the villain for Black people isn't racism, isn't white people, like maybe like make them fight monsters or demons or like an evil queen or something, but don't make it racism, because it's just ridiculous that you only see Black people when they're fighting racism. And yes, it's a huge factor, but we didn't make it a factor, so it shouldn't be the only thing that we're shown. Like, it's not like they're not, I don't know what the word is, but they don't come hand in hand, racism and Black people. So yeah, I think that's one thing that needs to change.
I saw a tweet once, and I've lived by it ever since. And it's something that I've like based my theatre company, Piece of Cake Theatre Company, follow on Instagram, on. Is the tweet was, when are we going to start? Well, when are we stop watching films about people being Black and start seeing films and TV shows about Black people being? I'm paraphrasing, but that is something that myself and my theatre partner, Ibrahim Toure, are looking to do, with creating new device pieces and to find work and create work that is about Black people and people of colour just being, because it isn't just about, you know, the stuff that's happened to us. We do actually just have normal lives and have normal issues in our lives, and we go through the exact same things, and we go through puberty and the same hormones and the same things at school. Not the exact same, because we have the added pressure of being Black, but there are so many stories that can be told that don't need to revolve around race, and I think that's really important. Has anyone else got any ideas or things that they think the industry needs to change? Yemi.
I think just building off of what you guys have just said, something that's so like uncomfortable and difficult to have to think about in the industry is, if you have been like chosen for something, if you have been casted for something, or involved in any type of project, you don't want to be the person that's there to represent diversity. I do not like I really find it so uncomfortable to find that I'm the only Black person there, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's just so that, you know, they can now say that they're a diverse company or they're a diverse whatever, and it's so hard to know whether your place there is genuinely deserved and because of your talent, or because you kind of represent a demographic that is struggling and needs that kind of, you know, attention. And it's obviously it's so important to have, you know, Black people in theatre and in any sort of art, but just the intention behind it, again, it's like sometimes have to double take and kind of double like question that again. It's a bit uncomfortable. It's like, why am I really here? You know, why have I been chosen for this? So I think that's something that in the industry, I think maybe needs to kind of, I'm not sure how, but maybe less of a kind of, we've chosen you and then now we can kind of advertise this about ourselves, because we're separate really. Like, if I'm doing this as an artist and this is me as you know, you've chosen me for I'm talented, or you think that I'm good at this and that and the other, not because I'm Black and you guys want to look like, you know, you covered your back. So I think that's something about the industry that, yeah.
Definitely. Abolish smoking. We don't need it.
Yeah.
Hannah?
Yeah, I was just going to say, kind of turning off of what everyone else has said, I'd really like to see stories about Black joy. Like, we don't just have our suffering to offer, you know? There's so much beautiful and brilliantness within the Black community and stories of joy. I think I think also there can be a fear that if we start telling stories of joy and good things, that will detract and take away attention from the bad stuff that's happening. I think there's that kind of fear as well. Like I fear that, you know, sometimes that, like, if you start talking about good things, and people be like, oh, I guess the bad stuff's not that bad anymore. And it's like, no, that stuff's still there. But guess what? We don't only suffer, we also dance and we celebrate, and we have so much joy and love to express and show and give. So I'd like to see more stories about Black joy. I think that's what I'd like to see in theatre.
Adding on to the question from Jess, we got someone called the Col 8. I said, though 2020 is a weird time for theatre, do you feel a sense or a change in our industry? Do you feel it? Yeah, I guess it's hard to say because the industries have been a bit put on pause due to Miss Rona. Do you think there's already a bit of a shift, or do you still think we need to? Georgia?
I think it's changing. I think it's still got a long, long way to go. And I think that comes, obviously there's been like great, amazing theatre that has been out there, obviously before this damn pandemic, but like Barbershop Chronicles, or like just there's so many things that have been in the West End and in London that have been amazing and a great shift for us. But I think the main thing is just getting more people in those higher places. Like you've got Kwame at the Young Vit, you've got Lynette at the Bush, but we need more people in those high places for then a true change to happen. Because yeah, that's my opinion of like how I see a future, is just getting more people of colour in those positions, so that theatre, and that's how it happens, that will be how we get theatre about normal everyday occurrences, and the cast just happens to be whatever, like it doesn't matter what the cast looks like. That's what I see, hopefully.
Definitely. I read a statistic at some point this week, and I can't remember it off the top of my head. Should have written it down, but it was a percentage of Black writers, and then an even smaller percentage of Black writers who have like gone anywhere near the Oscars. And I shouldn't have been shocked. I was shocked but not surprised. I can't believe the little amount of Black writers that they are in TV and film. And obviously that, like, you can't write stories about Black lives if you don't have a Black life in the room writing the stories. Kiren.
Yeah, again, off of that, I think I agree. Things are changing, and I think it's easy for, especially myself as an actor, to kind of focus on the actors, but like I think there needs to be much of a bigger change with like the creative teams behind shows, and from the producers to the DSMs to the sound designers, the lighting designers. Like there's not enough support for ethnic minority people that want to go into those industries, whether that's from like funding to go and try and learn how to do those things, but actually getting those jobs after you have done the training. And especially for like, even when we look at MT and the hair, like the hairstylists over there and stuff like that, like I think there needs to be more of a shift now looking at that as well, because it can be too easy to just forget about all that and just focus on, let's get lots of Black and brown faces on screen and on stage.
Definitely. And I'm calling it out here now. If you call yourself a makeup artist or a hairstylist or anything to do with someone's skin or hair, and you haven't trained yourself as much in Black hair and Black skin, or any minority ethnic hair and skin as you have with the white part, you're not fully trained. Don't call yourself fully qualified, because you're not. And I'm sick of it. The last question we have is, have you had conversations with any of your non-Black friends on the BLM movement? How easy was it? And if not, how have you gone about trying to educate them on what the movement is about? Yemi?
Just hearing the question, I wanted to start by, I think being a Black person and talking to non-Black people about the movement, it just, like, first and foremost, it is not our job or our responsibility to educate people on racism, on being Black, on, what they should and shouldn't be doing. And so I think, if anything, when I've had those conversations with my friends, obviously most of the time they have been really supportive and welcoming of that. But it's just a thing of, I'm not going to sit here and break everything, down for you, and every situation that I've had and faced, to kind of educate you so that for the future. It's something that you need to spend the time doing, whether it be watch something on Netflix or research stuff or find positions, whatever it is. It's not on us. We've already had to suffer enough, shit from everywhere and everyone all the time, and question ourselves and second guess ourselves. So it is not my job to sit here and spend my time explaining to you why you should and shouldn't be doing things. So I think that's my response to that question.
Thank you. Anybody else? Hannah?
I don't know if anyone else feels like this, but I feel like when I'm entering a or sometimes it's just thrown upon me, like maybe I didn't want to have this conversation, but you've started it, so okay, here we go. Like I feel like it can almost be a bit dangerous for me, in the sense that I feel like I kind of avoid bringing up certain things because your reaction might set off something in me, like it might trigger something really painful or horrible, and it's like, or the realization of, oh my God, you really have no clue, do you? We've got such a long way to go. So I guess from someone who isn't Black, understanding that when like someone, a person of color or a Black person entering that conversation, that it's a big thing actually. And it can be a massive weight and a massive pressure. Yeah, I don't know if I've explained that right. Yeah.
Raisharnai?
I haven't had any friends with conversation. I haven't had any conversation with any of my white friends, like mainly because they haven't reached out to me. But I think, I mean, when you try, because before it sort of like erupted in 2020, I tried to start conversations because I wanted my friends to understand, especially when they were talking about things or listening to songs and repeating it. And I'm like, you can't actually say that. This is what you're talking about, or like trying to illustrate that like they don't know what they're speaking about. I think generally, I don't want to be offensive. I get really scared about being offensive, but I think some white people need to take a step back, because they're coming in like, oh no, I know what you're talking about. Oh, I know what this is. No, I'm really educated. I'm really woke, or whatever they want to say. And it's like, take a step back because you haven't experienced it. And I think like when we read in comments and I'm like, lower your tone, because they're saying like, oh, you're only saying this because of this. You're only saying this because of this. Actually, I know about this. And it's like, it's almost like a card that they can hold up and be like, actually, I'm really educated, and actually I'm really this. And it's like a flex or something. And I think you can't flex with someone's pain, because that's disgusting. And I think when you're speaking about it, or if you approach someone, a Black person, and talk about BLM, understand that's a painful experience for them. And don't be offended if you say something wrong and they point it out, because they're going to point it out, hopefully, because it needs to be pointed out. And I think calling you racist or saying what you've just said is racist isn't an insult. I don't understand. It really confuses me how some white people have taken it as an insult, and like, oh, you're insulting me because you think I'm whatever. That person isn't trying to be mean. They're your friend. They want you to understand. If they've said you're racist, and you like, honestly, some white people don't understand that, like, I don't think that's racist, I think you're wrong, then tell them that and ask, okay, why was that racist? Can you give me a lesson? Or like, if you don't want to speak about it, or you have resources, or maybe I'll just Google it because Google is free. I just think, if you're like going to have a conversation, understand that you might be wrong and that you don't understand everything, so you need to like lower your tone sometimes.
Definitely. I think that's such an important thing. No amount of books, articles, Instagram swipey things, podcasts, there's no amount of research that you can do as a white person that will be more succinct than my 25 years of lived life experience as a person of color, as a Black person. And something that I have to bite my tongue a lot about is speaking to people who are really educated on it or have done a lot of research about it. And I'm trying to talk to them about things I've been through in the past, and try and talk about things from my point of view, and then they'll speak over me because they've read something about it or they've heard something about it. And I'm kind of just like, I love that you're putting in the work. I love that. But you've got an actual Black person sitting with you, telling you a real life story from up front, like from their personal experience. And I think it's really important, as much as you want to be involved in the conversation and prove all about the work that you've done, when a Black person is speaking about their lived experience, it's the perfect time to just close your mouth and listen. Georgia, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I've been really lucky with the friends that I surround myself with, because I try and surround myself with people that will call me out on things and I will call them out on things, and we don't get offended by that. It's just kind of like we love each other and want each other to be the best in every circumstance. So I think that's just like a general consensus for the group of people that I live with and spend time with, is that even obviously Black Lives Matter, but any topic, like whenever someone says something that someone's been offended or they've disagreed, then it's like a healthy discussion to have, to learn from each other and grow together. And I think that is the main thing, when you know you've got a good group of people around you that will call you out on things, because that means that they care and that they want you to listen and learn. So yeah, I think my friends have been amazing. They're great. But I think that's the best thing to do, is surround yourself by people that will listen to you, but also call you out.
Great bit of advice for just any part of life, for sure. Raisharnai?
Sorry, I just want to say one more thing about like teachers, because when like the George Floyd, when he was murdered, in my newsletter it was, I wonder what will come up in the history books. And I was like, really? That's what you put out? And I think teachers, because when you look at racism, you learn racism, you're not born racist, and you learn it through school. And I think schools have this amazing opportunity to shape kids and their lives. So you can either, I mean, some people like to break children down, and that happens a lot with Black children, and that's awful. But if you're a teacher and you're teaching racism, even if you're not, and you're just a teacher, maybe speak to Black kids, but don't put it on them to speak about it. And I think also you need to censor to a certain extent, like what you're showing. Because when I learned about slavery, there was a video about it, and I've never cried so much, because they reenacted what happened, and I sort of had to sit in the lesson at the front. Everyone could see me crying, and then eventually I got to leave. But then because I cried, they said, we're not going to show the video anymore. I'd already seen it. So then subsequently everybody blamed me for it, like, oh, you cried, so now we can't watch it, as if they wanted to watch it. But I think it's like you just need to speak to Black children or other Black colleagues or people, just Black friends or people online, and need to look at their experiences, especially if they're white. And I think predominantly speaking about white teachers. And like I said before, but you need to introduce the conversation in lessons and introduce it in the right way. So not like, is BLM necessary? Like, look at why is BLM, not why, no, what, that's not what I mean. Why does BLM exist? Like who's look at like who's doing it and why it's a thing, and don't put it on the Black people and like, oh, because when you say like Black people are protesting because whatever, say like white police officers are murdering Black people, subsequently Black people are protesting. Like look at it start with the oppression, not with the oppressed. And that's just what I think we need to do when we're speaking about Black Lives Matter.
Can I just say, this girl here is 15 years of age. Start with the oppression, not with the oppressed. She's going to change the world, and we're all here to witness it start to happen. Well, on that absolute mic drop moment, I'm going to say thank you everyone for performing today. Thank you everyone for being a part of this discussion, and thank you to everyone at home watching. This has been Rush. Thanks.